Welcome back to the Draft FC podcast, the podcast, YouTube channel, and website dedicated to all things official Draft FPL. My name's Kieran, and I'm here again for your Gameweek preview. Today, we'll be going through your waiver options, hidden gems, and predicted lineups, and general FPL chat ahead of Gameweek 35. I'm going to focus team to team this week, just to remind you about the key things that you need to remember when you pick a player from a certain side. I'm recording this episode on Monday, 28 April, so any team news, injury developments, or press conference information is up to date as of then and subject to change. To make sure that you get this pod in time for the deadline, I'm recording this on Monday and before Forest play Brentford, of course. The deadline is at 11:30 on Thursday, just as a reminder. Some of the players I'll be discussing in this episode include Ben White, Ismail Assar, and you are hearing this right, Kyle Walker-Peters. So let's get into it. Like I said, I'm going to go team by team. So let's start with the Premier European competition. So that's Champions League, and the only English side left in that competition is Arsenal. With the Champions League second leg on Wednesday, after the PSG game, that I don't know what's happened. You obviously already know what happened. Expect rotation against Bournemouth. While Bournemouth are no mugs against some of the bigger teams, and they do give them a run for their money, they've only won 2 games since Jan, and one was against Southampton. So while it could be a tough game, I think it's going to be made more tough by the fact that Arteta's probably going to rotate, even though he usually likes to run his players into the ground. You could expect starts for White, Zinchenko, and Tierney, as he looks to keep some players fresh for the PSG game. Tierney and Zinchenko could especially start in advanced positions, increasing the likelihood of return. And we've seen Tierney at left wing, we've seen Zinchenko in midfield, so that could be an option. And Sterling and Nwaneri are also likely to get some pitch time. Whether they start from the beginning, I'm unsure. I think they will, but they'll definitely get some time off the bench if you're looking at some Arsenal options. Sticking with the game, let's go to Bournemouth, and the main thing to call out is to look out for the Evan Nelson red card. He got a red card at the weekend, and they are appealing it, and that's subject to change whether he'll come back. The players that I've got on my radar are Semenyo, because he's really, regardless of how Bournemouth are playing, he's one to look out for. But given if Evan Nelson is out, Kluivert could thrive in that absence, so it's one to look out for. Moving on to the second tier European competition, we've got Spurs away at West Ham. Both have been serial underperformers this season. You don't need me to tell you that. And Spurs are another team who may be worried about the injuries they'll get in the Prem, and the damage it could do to their Europa League run. Against Liverpool, we saw Danso, Davis, Bergvall, Gray start, and despite the poor performance, I'd guess they'd be in line again this weekend. If you're holding the likes of Son, Kulusevski, and Porro, go into this game with the understanding that they might play 30 minutes, they might not play at all, they might start, but it's risky business at this point of the season. For the Hammers, for the first time in a while, we recommend their players. Bowen Ash out last week, despite how they've been playing, but against a weakened Spurs team, I'd go all in on Kudus and Souček, who scored last week, if they are available in your league. Man United are the other team in the Europa League, and Amram's been hesitant to rotate his players, partly because he's got a lot of injuries on his hands, and they're away at Brentford this week. I'm predicting Brentford to be too strong for them anyway, and would recommend the defenders I did last week in Collins, Ayer, and Van den Berg. And finally, we've got a third tier competition, which my team, Chelsea, are in. Chelsea have not been lucky enough to rotate their whole team recently like they did earlier on in the season in this competition, and Maresca has noticeably been hell-bent in playing his best players all the time in all competitions, which has tired them out. Both competitions, the Conference League and the Premier League, are of importance to Chelsea, whereas Spurs and Man United and Arsenal will be rotating heavily in the Premier League campaigns because their Premier League campaigns have fizzled a little. Chelsea, for them, getting into the Champions League especially for the fans, and board is really important, and I hope that's filtered through to Maresca, and I think he'll be getting pressure from the board to think in that same way to really get into the Champions League, and that's the most important thing. But it's a tough game in front of them with Liverpool this weekend. Chelsea are at home. These two teams fought out a really tight game earlier in the season when they were both seemingly title contenders. Chelsea welcomed the return of Lavia last week, and they are a different beast with him in the side. I'd veer away from this game, but if you don't have that luxury and you're a larger league and you need to look at this, the players in these teams, the players I'd look out for are Madueke, who performed pretty strongly off the left, which is unusual for him. I also thought Gakpo had a much stronger game than his 7 points suggests. There was a really tight overhead kick. There was a chance where he ran through and he ended up passing it. So that's someone I'd look at. And Bradley picked up a knock out of nowhere. But I'll reiterate what I said in the comments last week. I expect him to play over Trent. With VVD and Salah, there was noise about contracts, but not where they go. But with Trent, we've known seemingly for a long time that Real Madrid are interested and very strongly interested. Unless Liverpool think that there is still a chance that Trent will stay, they should play him. But I just don't see that at this point, and it seems silly to have Bradley available and to not play him and not give him a run of games to see if he's good enough at this level. So I expect if Bradley shakes off this knock, I still think that he should be starting over Trent. It's not even just I think. Sorry, let me reiterate. I think Slot should be starting him over Trent. And next, the really important thing still going on in the league, with the Championship tied up and with relegation tied up, is who's going to get into the Champions League. So the teams going for the Champions League, we've got Newcastle away at Brighton, Man City on Friday night at home against Wolves, Aston Villa at home to Fulham, and Forest away at Palace. After Man City, Villa have the strongest clean sheet percentage out of the fixtures I just mentioned, with 37% likelihood. However, I don't think this is taking into account how rough a few weeks they've had out of the Champions League, and in the last week they conceded a last-minute goal against Man City to lose that game, and then also were just completely outclassed by Crystal Palace in the FA Cup at the weekend. I think it's going to be a tough game against Fulham, and maybe where their challenge for the Champions League starts to falter. Key players for this fixture are Sessegnon with 2 back-to-back 11-pointers, Iwobi and Jimenez, and with Jimenez, who's playing at the moment with Muniz out injured. Palace, buoyed by their excellent win at the weekend, will give Forest a tough game. Hard to comment on this one because I'm having to film this so early, but Sarr had a fantastic game, and if he's available in your league, you should grab him, given a few managers in your league will have dropped Palace assets last week. Munoz is another one who is always a threat going forward, but also has that cleaning potential attached to him. That's it for Palace. Now, next one, we've got Brighton. So Brighton were playing at home against Newcastle, and they're usually fairly strong there. But Newcastle are dead set to be on the Champions League, and they've been on a rampage of the last maybe 20 games. It's a tough game to call, and I think it's a tough game for Newcastle overall. Welbeck is a safe way into the Brighton team if that's a team you're looking at, especially with the suspension for João Pedro, whereas someone like Mitoma has been coming off the bench. He's been returning, but he's not been starting, and it's unsure how the rest of the Brighton attack will line up, but Welbeck is a sure bet. With Newcastle, most of their players have already been drafted, and those of you looking at Osula, who scored last week, should probably just ignore that. I think he played because of the calibre of the opposition in Ipswich to give Isak a bit of a rest. He came on with 15 minutes ago. I don't think that'll be happening again, especially against a team like Brighton. So that leaves City. So City comfortably beat Forest at the weekend in the FA Cup. And if by some miracle O'Reilly is still available in your league, he's a must pick up. So that's an obvious one with 3 clean sheets and 2 goals in 5. There's a fair amount of rotation going on in the rest of Man City's attack. However, Marmoush is is a mainstay. He's always going to be playing, and I think KDB will start but get taken off at some point. Wolves are no mugs at the moment. I think that's 6 wins on the bounce. However, last week I recommended going all in on Wolves defense, and those of you that followed me will have had a great time with a clean sheet for all 3 defenders if you tripled up. Like I said, this week I would drop all of them despite their form, given the calibre of the opposition. In larger leagues, it might be worth holding on to Menetzi just because of the areas that he's been operating in. However, I think the defenders are a drop. And to round out some of the fixtures for the weekend, we've got Everton at home against Ipswich, and the big battle of the weekend with Leicester at home to Southampton. In the last 8 games, Everton have only managed to score 5 goals and are slowly showing signs of the side that we saw earlier in the season under Dyche. Don't be surprised to see Broja playing again. Last week he was ineligible against Chelsea, but Beto has not looked the same. He had a bit of a run of form when Moyes came in, but was dropped rightly for Broja, and I expect him to come back in. And despite Broja coming in, I do still think Beto will come on and get a few minutes. So if you have him and there's not that many better options in your larger leagues for forwards, it might be worth still hanging on to him and sneaking him onto your bench. Ipswich are usually good for a goal, so this has, for me, Everton Ipswich has 1-1 written all over it. Though if you're stretched for defensive options, I might consider Ipswich defenders this week, given Everton's poor record in terms of goal scoring for the last few weeks. I would also go to the other fixture, happily consider Southampton defenders this week. This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment. Those of you that followed my Wolves pitch last week will have had a great time. Now is the right time to start thinking a little bit more outside the box. Teams that you would not usually pick up players from, going all in on them. Like I said, it can really make the difference between finishing second or first, or finishing bottom and 9th, let's say. So I think it's Southampton is a strong opportunity for a clean sheet this week. Leicester have scored in just 2 games since the 4th of Jan, while Southampton, like Ipswich, are usually quite good for a goal. The likes of Walker-Peters, Manning, Stevens, Hardwood, Bellis and Bednarek are available in most leagues and are my call this week for a triple up, potentially even a quadruple. I said it, but that is for the people that like to gamble a little bit. Anyway, that was a big rundown, and a reminder that mentality has really changed for Premier League managers. Some are prioritising the cups, some have got their jobs on the line, and some are already on holiday. With 4 games left, it's important for you to rethink your strategies and the way that you manage, and do some things you wouldn't do earlier in the season, including going all in on Southampton, or dropping that player that you've had all season because you don't fancy them in the last 4 fixtures, or you don't think they're going to play. There's no later where it's going to all become rosy again. If you don't think Son's going to play for the last 4 fixtures, it might be worth getting a better option in who you think will play and will get points. Cool. So hidden gems, I'm going to actually just call out some ownership percentages here. We've got Walker-Peters, Hardwood, Bellis and Bednarek at 3.7% ownership, 0.9% ownership and 0.9 again, respectively. And that's in 10 team leagues. So I think, again, as if I haven't already said, Southampton is a really big call-out. I think Kamaldeen Sulemana is also worth a shout at 0.2% owned against a poor Leicester side. Tierney is 1.4% owned in 10-team leagues. Broja, as mentioned earlier, 6.5% owned in 10-team leagues. And if you're in a really large league and struggling, McCarthy for Man City is worth a punt, 0.7% owned in 10-team leagues. And in terms of getting rid, sorry Mitch, but Spurs assets, I think, given their form, it being unlikely that the big boys will play in all of these fixtures coming up, it's really hard to recommend them now. So I'd really second guess whether they're the right players for your team anymore. I think Solanke is probably still worth it, but some of the others, like Kulusevski, may not play this week, and he may not play next week. It's something to really think about. To close out, predicted lineups, I'll be updating them. I've updated them a little bit already, but I'll be updating them properly on Wednesday. So check them out on the website as normal. And that's it. Thanks for listening. The waiver deadline, just to remind you, is 11:30 p.m. on Thursday after the Forest game against Brentford. Set an alarm right now because it is not your normal waiver deadline. And so what's the only thing that's left to say is do like and subscribe and stay sharp.